We are so excited to see so many people here this evening. We have a great turnout for our receptions, but this one is really outstanding. And I want to give kudos to Amanda Poss and her team for all that they do. If we can get So on behalf of the Hillsborough College Board of Trustees, our college president, Dr. Ken Atwater, and the team here at the Dale Mabry campus, we'd like to welcome you. I'm going to be brief because I know you'd like to hear from the panel, but I have to share very quickly. I'm from Chicago originally, and I'm started my, another Chicago one, and I've started my 5th year here, and I did not know anything about Theo. And the purpose, one of the purposes, for our art galleries is to educate. We're educators. And so walking through and talking to all of you and listening and hearing and getting the insight, I've got goosebumps right now. It's opening eyes, it's opening minds, it's opening hearts to art and the people that have had such an impact right here in our community. So I am blessed and I am so thrilled to be able to come here and experience this with all of you this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dustin Lemke.
I'm the Dean of AA here on this campus, and I get tasked tonight with lots of thank yous. And anytime there's a big show like this with so many pieces, there are a lot of thank yous. So first, sincere gratitude to Susan Johnson, widow and estate manager for Theo. The collaboration and coming up with the exhibition, but that also that she's trusted HCC with the Theo Wujcik archive. We're very appreciative for. So thank you. And I was going to say this at the end, but I'll stick it here anyway. This is one of our huge things, is that we want to showcase local artists. And we want students to be able to connect with it and see it. So I think tonight you see both of those coming together, that there are lots of HCC students here, so that's great. Then the lenders. This did not all just come from one place. We got this from several places. So first, the Tampa Museum of Art with Sarah Smith and Joanna Robotham. So thank you for your work with us. The University of South Florida Contemporary Art Museum with Shannon Annis and Margaret Miller. Thank you. Tempus Projects with thanks to Tracy Midulla. Lorraine, Roger, and Brian Golem, thank you. Alan Kahana, thank you for loaning pieces. I told you it was a long list. Stanton Store, thank you for loaning pieces. And then Cindy Layton and Ward Viator, so thank you for them. As always, we couldn't do this without the Student Government Association for HCC. They provide funding for advertising, food, things like that to help, so we appreciate that. Then the gallery team and what they accomplish. And this one, it doesn't go up overnight. I'm sure many of you know, if you hang shows and curate, it doesn't go up overnight. They worked for many weeks on getting this. And they painted walls and repainted walls and put things in one place and then put them in other places. They always have a nosy dean sticking his business, his nose in their business. So I love to see it come together, and it's very exciting for that. And we thank the panelists for being here. So thank you. And Amanda is going to be introducing them and giving stuff. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your support. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you to Dustin. I will say and brag a little bit about our administration here at HCC. We do what we do because we're trusted and given a lot of creative freedom, and that comes from the top. So thank you, Paige, and thank you, Dustin, for always supporting the arts and culture on the campus. I have really impressive folks with me tonight, and they have very, very long, impressive bios that I have down to like 2 to 3 sentences. Just know that I'm very, very honored and grateful to have them all here. I'm going to do just a very short introduction. I have here to my right Susan Johnson, who's the widow and estate manager for Theo Wujcik. She is, and this is officially official as of today, the donor for the Theo Wujcik archive. We are the new home of that. So. So with that, Susan has entrusted us because she's been the one caring for and maintaining Theo's life and legacy since his passing in 2014. And she's also retired set decorator and prop stylist for film and television. Then I have Tracy Midulla, who is the founder and director of Tempus Projects. Tracy holds an MFA from Florida State University and is a former faculty member for Hillsborough College. And the many, many things Tracy's doing currently, she also serves as the Director of Curatorial and Community Affairs for Crest Contemporary in Ybor City. Then I have, I go right along. Joanna Robotham is the Curator of Modern Contemporary Art at the Tampa Museum of Art, where she has worked since 2016. She builds the museum's collections and curates many, many exhibitions per year. She holds a master's degree from Bard College and has previously held positions at the Jewish Museum and Seattle Repertory Theater. So thank you, Joanna. Wallace, or Wally, as he's better known, Wilson, is Director Emeritus and former Professor of Photography for the USF School of Art and Art History, where he served for 28 years. Wally holds an MFA from the School of Art Institute in Chicago and has exhibited works on over 100 individual and group exhibitions in the U.S., Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Thank you, Wally, for being here. Okay, so now as we start this, which I've been lovingly referring to in our office as story time with Theo, I wanted to start, since we don't have Theo here with us, to have our panelists give us a sense of the first time they met Theo or saw his work. And I asked them to think of that first impression in 2 to 3 words, if they had to, and to share that, and then a little bit of that story of that first meeting. So, whoever would like to go first?
I'll go.
Okay,
how do I do this?
Just talk into it? Yeah, you can take it off the stand if you prefer.
Hello. Love at first sight. Okay, so I arrived in Tampa, I think, in late 1990, and I opened a cafe with Marcy Hoffman Porges, who had a framing gallery and a liquor license to open a little cafe. And I had moved here from LA and introduced pierogies with a variety of toppings, and so one day a collector brought him to the cafe to because we were serving pierogies, and I spotted him and I was like, hubba hubba, and he didn't notice me, and he came in every day afterwards and still didn't give me any looks whatsoever, and so I'd like bump the waitress, like, let me serve the pierogies, and nothing out of him. And then one night I went down to Trax, which was a gay bar in Tampa, in Ybor, and I walked in, and I guess he had a little liquid courage, and he comes running up to me and he says, "Susan, let's dance." And so we danced the night away, and 3 weeks later we were married.
Now someone has to follow that.
Like, what am I supposed to say now? I'm not going to answer any of the questions correctly tonight. I don't remember exactly when I met Theo. I was never a student of his, but I did work I've worked in Ybor City most of my adult life, and I can tell you that my first real memory, my first meaningful interaction with Theo was wandering into his studio. He had the doors open, and I was like, "What's going on in here?" And I was like, "Oh, this is Theo Wujcik's studio." And I recognized his work before I recognized him. And we always had a very kind and casual conversation about work, and it was often not about his work, but he was just always really wonderful to talk to. And that's I think that's the first real memory I have of knowing him.
So I'm the only one on the panel who actually has not had the privilege of meeting Theo. I started at the Tampa Museum of Art in 2016, so pretty recently after Theo had passed. But but I was quite aware of his work. In fact, one of the first works in the collection that really stands out in my mind, we have about 8,000 objects in our collection, but I remember vividly seeing Theo Wujcik's painting Millennium in our collection, which is a wonderful kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it properly, just a wonderful painting that I think really encapsulated his work from, I think, the late 90s to early 2000s, and I've put it up in several shows since then. My two words that I think, as being someone who has never met him, I only know Theo through his art, is actually two words, would be surprising and curious. Because every time I have walked into a collector's home in the Tampa Bay area, I've been shocked to see so many different iterations of Theo. I recall walking into somebody's home and seeing one of his fantastic hamburger paintings with a green background, or going into another person's home and seeing a wonderful collage painting, and then seeing some of his more figurative work that was based on some of the nightlife in Ybor. And every single painting that everybody has is different. And so it's made me become really appreciative of wanting to learn more about those different areas, different genres of Theo's work, but also just surprised every time I see a work of Theo's in a collection. It just shows how beloved he was in this community.
First, I want to say congratulations on this, what it is, describe it as juicy
Yes.
exhibition.
Best review ever.
Extraordinary job. I was so impressed by you and your team and the work that you did. So, kudos. And I want to thank you for having me on this panel. It's great to get together with these folks and see, especially Susan again. It's been way too long. Theo came to USF in the community here in 1970, and it was 24 years later that I came. So, and then there was 9 years that we overlapped. So I did not know the early years of him being here. There were a lot of stories, some of which you'll hear, and others possibly not. And but you know, my impression of him in my role as the chair of the art department at the university was that he was quiet, somewhat intense. I noticed that quickly gave way to a kind of quick wit, and that he was actually quite funny. And he was that way, and while he had been shy in my first meetings with him, he apparently to others in the community was known as being very social, and you know, this person that danced and was a big kind of party guy, and that became more apparent to me the longer that I was here. With me, he was always respectful. I mean, I was his boss. Initially, when I got here, I said to someone how kind everybody was to me, and they said, well, that's because you're the boss. Quite possibly they don't like you at all. But he was always respectful and extraordinarily kind to me, and I did find he was always up for talking about art making, artists, the art scene, both locally and nationally. So 2 words, complicated, and I think ultimately extraordinary.
We're going to go right back to you at the next question, Wally, and talking a little bit about when Theo came down to Florida in 1970. And at that time, it was Donald Saff, who was the founder of USF Graphic Studio, who invited him to come and be the shop's manager and a master printer. But he quickly transitioned about a year later to be appointed on the art department faculty, where he remained teaching until 2003. As you said, you began working around 1994, and so I want to invite you to talk more about Theo's time at USF. Share with us some of your observations about his work as an educator.
Okay, thank you. So, because we overlapped the 9 years, and he'd been here for more than 2 decades before I arrived, I sought input from several other people in the community, and they were very helpful, and even had a late phone call with Peg Trezevant this afternoon, who had been a student of his. So I do want to thank Mernette Larson, Bruce Marsh, Margaret Miller, Peg, and Kirk Wong, all of whom took time to talk to me about Theo as a teacher. Going back to, so as the story goes, he initially was hired as a master printer at Graphic Studio. And he had a very high, sophisticated technical level. And so he excelled at that and was presumably why he was hired. He had been at Tamarind and Gemini in the West of the U.S. And so he brought, I think, that technical expertise in. Shortly thereafter, within a year or so, he started teaching in the department, in the art department, as it was called at the time. And so that changed in a way from being, and I tried this out on a couple of people, so this is what they agreed. And I think it's true. He initially was this expert at printmaking, and I think he taught that way. But as he himself evolved from a technician and this director of the shop at Graphic Studio, and got more engaged with ideas and the conceptual, he shared that with his students. Mm-hmm. And he took on a role as a mentor. And I came up with this, after thinking about it, I came up with this title, a collaborative mentor. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't just the sole leader, but actually he was a part of the students, and they in turn did follow him. And so it was it seemed to me, from talking to a number of people, a really beautiful relationship, and I observed that also in the department. I thought that in looking at his work, and you can see it in the exhibition, as it flows from the drawings, the engravings, the silver points, I don't think they're here, but you get a sense of them from the plate that's out. It was an exquisite drawer. You can see in, say, the large two paintings on your left as you go in. You can see the ideas that had manifested in the way that he made his work. And that flow, he never lost that technical skill, but he was able to make use of it in this range of ideas and this kind of eclectic picking up of different styles. And I think that's some of the challenge that you might have in trying to place him, because he wasn't exactly what I call a chameleon, but he moved and never was still. I think as he changed in that way, the students moved toward him. We're to tell stories at the end. One that I thought about saving, but I'll spill it now, was that for years, evidently, he lived in his office in the art building. And so I think his availability to the students was just very different. I mean, than the other faculty. As Kirk said when I talked to him, the other faculty would go home to their families, and Theo would be there for us. And it enabled this kind of collaboration that resulted in this project, this Moto Dato, which was a collective of students and Theo. But it wasn't a hierarchical relationship. It was a collaborative one. And then later, my understanding is, and this kind of finished up right when I came and I'll shut up, was that he was also deeply involved in Titanic anatomy, which some of you may remember. And it again was a collective. The last point I want to make is his type of mentoring. He was, because he was a relentless artist, he was relentless in his expectations of the students who most gravitated toward him. And so I heard several stories of this expectation, demand maybe, that the students be focused on and disciplined about hard work, details in their work, how to really look and see and penetrate into what you're making, but also when you're looking at the work by others. How to be self-critical and understand the need for that and to become a better artist. And even down to how to use your time and how to separate parts of your day. And that almost nothing that you would do if you were a real artist was not about making art, even though to someone else observing you it may seem like you were killing time, goofing off, not being serious about what you were doing. The last comment I'll make is that he was not, so he did not have a terminal degree. And institutions like this college, certainly universities, are very pretentious about credentials. No. And so Theo did not have an advanced degree. And there are those who said that because of that he was quiet and, though opinionated, didn't speak up in faculty meetings. I don't remember that very often, that he spoke up. I think from conversations with him he had opinions, but he just didn't voice them. He felt a bit lesser than, which wasn't the case at all. And I don't think his colleagues felt that way toward him. I know that Myrnette Larson said that in particular she remembered his value in search committees for new faculty, that he was deeply involved in it, and that looking past the obvious, he did not just look at resumes or CVs or the credentials of the applicants, but also deeply into the work that they made and the statements that they would write. One last thing I'll say, speaking of writing, and that was that along with this evolution from this kind of technical background and set of talents and abilities that he brought to this community, as he evolved, he also became a active journal maker. And I thought one of the real high points in the exhibition, several of the high points, are the journal entries that Amanda put up, that it relates specifically to the pieces that they're next to. If you did not read them, please do yourself a favor and do so, because they're just absolutely delightful. And they're so thoughtful in penetrating into that work and revealing to you as the reader. So, those are my thoughts.
Well, it's actually a wonderful segue, because we're going to talk a little bit more about his observations of the world around him, and you can get so much of that. I also never met Theo, but I feel like now I know him well. I've read his journals, many of his notes, and he did think so much about all of his daily observations. And probably one of his best known motifs is the chain link fence. And that came from observing just a coil of chain link that was a part of a construction site off of Nebraska Avenue in the 1980s. And so there's this sense in Theo's work, I think you can see this as you look around, that he was always observing and finding meaning in the overlooked and the discarded, such as his collection of discarded DJ cards. We have a couple in the hallway leading into the gallery. And he was also, as we said, an active part in Ybor's scene, especially dance and music. And this is in part why we titled the show Tempo, Tampa. There's a kind of rhythm not only to his work, but it's rhythm in line with the rhythm of the city, right? And so we have Susan here talking a little bit more about that part of his life. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit more about why connections to the underground dance and music scene are so significant for understanding Theo's work.
Okay, great. Oh yeah. Hey. Hi. Okay, so well, as everyone knows, I didn't know Theo when he first came onto the punk scene, and like Wally said, it started when he was sleeping in his office and hearing the kids punk music and the radio or the tape boxes or whatever. And I'm staying with one of his dearest friends, Marcia Miller, who was at that time running one of the clubs, Miss Lucky's, And then there was Renee's and Buffalo Roadhouse. So she and I were riffing a lot the last couple of days, and she very nicely typed up for me, because I get these weird brain things that skips a beat, which at least now I have an excuse. Before I didn't. A real excuse. But she helped me with this writing and our riffing, and I'm just so grateful for it. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. So around 1979 at Miss Lucky's and the Buffalo Roadhouse and Renee's, Theo found not chaos but clarity. Where others saw a dive bar, he saw a gallery in motion. Sweat, sound, and youth thrashing against the world. He understood that art was not confined to canvases or institutions, but was alive in the slam of bodies, in the scratch of guitars, in walls layered with posters and grit. At first, Theo stood by quietly, taking it all in. He understood that this unruly energy was culture being born, raw and unfiltered. For him, Miss Lucky's was a crucible, a place where the line between life and art dissolved. As the scene moved downtown, Theo became deeply woven into its pulse, meeting people with connections to the impotent sea snakes at 911, and later joining the band on stage at Masquerade, painting live as performance art. He moved his studio to Ybor, where he danced at Tracks and Masquerade, and after we met at OVO, as I mentioned earlier, we relocated the studio to a combined studio and apartment across from HCC Ybor campus, where Frankie crawled around on the balcony eventually. When Alan Kahana acquired space at the Labor Temple across the street, he invited me to design the project, and I envisioned a post-Gothic saloon that Theo named the Castle. I took this opportunity to showcase Theo's art on rotation. The Castle eventually expanded with a new dance floor upstairs, and later its sister club, Czar, opened. Theo was always on hand to break in the new dance floors, even after our paths diverged. Theo remained a fixture at the castle. His art now fills the main hall above the dance floor he loved, some of which you see on display tonight. Let's remember that vision, that beauty hides in surprising places, that art breathes where people gather to be unapologetically themselves. Through his work, Theo still teaches us that noise, the movement, the imperfection, that was the masterpiece all along.
That was lovely, by the way. That rhythm he had at the clubs, and again, being an active participant, like Wally even said too, he wasn't just, teaching and learning over, he was working and collaborating with, that's where Theo became such like an integral part of this community. So I asked Tracy to talk a little bit more about this very big topic, because you met Theo around 2005 when you had the 5 Art Gallery prior to founding Tempus Project. So can you describe for us a little bit about the work he was making at that time and the role and importance he had in the art community as you were observing?
Yes. I hope I don't have to keep following Susan though. I don't remember what Theo was making at that time, and not because I was dismissive of it, but my relationship with Theo I think was always weird. I mean, it was good, it was positive, but I met him because I wandered into his studio, and most of the interactions I had with him were in his studio. And even though I was aware of his paintings and the larger works that I saw around Ybor City, and that's how I knew who he was, my experiences with him and what he was working on were always the smaller works and the more intimate works. And I don't know if it's because we both had a printmaking background, and that's what really spoke to me, because painting is a mystery to me. Like, I look at a painting and I go, wow, somebody made that. But and I'm like, what order do you do that in? I've just never been I don't have a painting brain, but I often my interactions with Theo in his studio were about small prints, about the paint skins that he collages onto decorative, like, magazine pages that he would pull out of mags, and so that's what I remember him working on whenever I was in his studio. But as for him popping into HCC and his interaction, I've got a little bit of a heads up about this question, and I've been trying to think of, like, the best way to answer this and be respectful and kind at the same time. But Theo used to make fun of our printmaking studio. If you're a printmaker, you know that it takes quite a facility to make a beautiful print, or it takes a very modest facility and a lot of ingenuity. And so the first time that he came into the printmaking studio when I was working, he said, "Oh, when are they going to get you a good studio?" And I was like, "Oh, I thought this was great. I love my studio. It has a press." And so he would kind of come in and make fun of things, if I'm being completely honest. And then he would come back around with a plate every now and again, and it would give me something to make fun of him about, because I'd be like, "I thought you didn't like our printmaking studio." But he would come in and he would pull a print or two. He'd bring a few plates in. And one of my favorite Theo stories, actually, about interacting with HCC and with the students, and I don't remember what year it was, but as you know, there's always a student exhibition and there's a guest juror. Do you know about this?
Yeah, I know a little bit.
Do you know that usually it's a very, like, we have, I'm sure there are people here that have been jurors. People try to be really inclusive. They want to make sure that all of the students have, like, a little bit of something that has been included. And Theo came in and picked 12 pieces and left. And everybody was mad. And I was like, this is a great show. I think that's why I really was so drawn to him. I forgot to give like the 2 words that described him, but I thought that he was tenacious and kind at the same time. But I don't know if that answered the question, but those are the interactions I had with him at work. Most of my other interactions were me wandering in or him coming to the gallery. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of people talk about his generosity of spirit working with students. It's hilarious to hear the other side, like that very, like, strict, very rigorous approach as well. So I'm going to move now to Joanna. In our show, we have Noonan, which is on loan from the TMA. Now we're going to, like, dive in a little bit more of, like, the art part and the history. So tell us a little bit more about the specific painting and kind of give it a historical situation to other artists and global art movements.
Sure. So Noonan is one of the highlights of our collection. It's a painting that I have looked at a number of times when we've installed it and just tried to figure it out, which I do a lot with Theo's paintings because there's so much. Every time you look at a Theo work, you'll see something new. Noonan is it is the name of the town where Van Gogh was born in the Netherlands. And so if you look at it, you'll notice in the upper left there is a very distinguishable image of Van Gogh's postman in there, if you study art history and you know that image, that portrait. Also, there's a semblance to Van Gogh's wooden chairs that show up in a lot of his domestic interiors. But then when you look at it more curiously, there are these, like, kind of big, bright red and orange globes or balls, spheres. And it wasn't until Amanda actually shared with me some of the notes from Theo's archive that I was able to glean more insight into what the painting means. So the date that we have in our database is 1986. So I imagine, Susan, maybe he started painting it, and then the Chernobyl disaster happened in 1987, which he writes about in the archive. So maybe the two of those working on it, and then this global event of this, the largest nuclear disaster to happen to date had happened. And so he's thinking about, I think, not only this horrible global event, but then the way that we consume and understand and take in and are just bombarded with news and media. And it's about that kind of having that ball kind of hurling at you and just being overwhelmed by it. So he's combining, like in a lot of his work, multiple themes, multiple layers. And then you have the formal qualities of the chain link fence, which is consistent with a lot of the work that he was doing in the 80s. It's interesting to me, if you look back at that time period, it's smack dab in the 1980s, which if you are an artist or an art historian, go back and look what artists were doing in the 1980s, particularly in New York. It was a period of incredible experimentation. It was artists opening their own spaces, not in the formal way that you have galleries now, but opening it up in their living room, or having, what we now call pop-up shows, but these were like spaces just where anybody could be an artist and make something. It wasn't expensive. I remember hearing stories about, some of the big artists later on that have been celebrated in museum shows. Their first show was like in the basement of a gallery in Tribeca, where it was completely raw. And I think that idea of experimentation in the 1980s is something that I pick up a lot in Theo's work, because he is so fearless in going from one formal style to another, to collaging, putting together so much different imagery. But I think it's also important to know what was happening. Okay, so then you have, in the art world, you have this convergence, not only in this experimentation, but you have the world of neos happening. You have, neo-geometry, you have neo-pop, you have neo-expressionism. So there's all these forces in the art world coming together. It's the time of Basquiat, of Haring, of Julian Schnabel, Sandro Cito. It's an incredible moment for art making. But then politically, you also have to look at what's happening in the 1980s. I'm a Gen Xer, so this time period I feel like I remember it as a kid. This is the time when HIV/AIDS first comes on the scene, and it explodes in the art world, from the visual arts to the performing arts. It takes everybody by storm. It is the era of Reagan. It's the era of the Cold War. And I think when you think about peeling away those layers in Theo's work, he's hitting at all those different things. He's thinking about formally what's happening in the art world, and then I think larger what's happening in the global world around him. At least that's my interpretation. I hope that that's correct, Susan.
Yeah, that's a lovely interpretation. I had a two-parter for Joanna. She had to do some heavy lifting tonight because of your role as with Curator and overseeing the collection. In Theo's work is in collections all over the country and internationally. MoMA, the Whitney, the Library of Congress, the National Gallery of Art, just to name a few. You may have heard of them, as well as many in the Tampa Bay area. So with the TMA, they have a fair number of Theo's works in the collection. And so for you as a curator, what kind of opportunities does having his work there present, and why is that important for your visitors?
Sure. So we often think when we're collecting, how much do you collect an artist in depth? And when I arrived at the museum, we had 18 works by Theo in the collection, the majority of them prints from the 1970s, the artist series of his friends, so Jim Dine, Ed Ruscha, Rauschenberg, Rosenquist, Alex Katz. Then we have this nice period of work from the 1980s, the Chain Link series, and then some work from the 90s, and then into the 2000s. We also, I would say Theo is probably the artist that we've collected the most in depth in the modern, the contemporary collection. I'd say the other artist, who I think is here, I saw him earlier, Mr. Marsh. Mm-hmm. Bruce Marsh is the other artist, I would say. We've collected the most in depth at the museum. But the wonderful thing about Theo's work is that, again, he is giving us a lesson in art history and the history of the art world. So, for example, even in my own, small collection, Theo, I imagine, has made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of works. But even in the 20 that we have in our collection, you know, we have fantastic works of Tatiana Grossman with Jasper Johns. For those of you who are interested in printmaking, look up Tatiana Grossman. She was the founder of ULAE, so the big, significant, one of the most influential printmaking ateliers in the United States that was out in Long Island. We also have a beautiful portrait of Ileana Sonnabend. So for those of you, again, if you're interested in the history of art, you have to look at the history of kind of the art market, the art scene. Ileana Sonnabend was one of the pioneering women in the New York gallery art world, showing some of the premier artists of the time. And so then Theo also, he's giving you not only that history of art, but kind of like that history of printmaking too. I'm fascinated by his connection to all of these different print studios across the country. And my biggest pet peeve is when I hear people dismiss printmaking as a medium, like, oh, whatever, it's just a print. It's like, no, prints are, they're just have this extraordinary history. And again, if you are an artist, go back and look at all these ateliers that are on Theo's resume, because they are so groundbreaking and influential. And I swear by the fact that when you come across an artist's bio, you're reading about them, most of the time they'll say that if they're a painter, a sculptor, that they love printmaking. It's the medium that they feel the most kind of experimental and can push the boundaries of being an artist. And I think that Theo really, I think he really exemplifies that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
It's so nice to like kind of talk about collections, and this is not only preserving history, you know, these are very lofty goals, but also we're collecting stories, right? Which you really lovely like hit on in your answer. And so I want to end, I know we started a little later, and it's like lightning round for them. I told them strictly quick, brief things, but I wanted to end by inviting them to share their favorite short Theo story. Whoever would like to go first.
I'll go first.
I don't want to go after Susan again. I think that my favorite Theo story is very short and sweet. Well after my prime go out dancing age, I decided to go out dancing with Sarah Howard and Sophia Nakis one night for Morrissey's birthday party. And because I think we were like a little older than you like really go out dancing age, we got there kind of early. And there was no one there. And we started dancing, and we were having a great time because we were together. And then Theo just showed up and danced with us what felt like all night, which was really fantastic. And it was great. I mean, I could tell you other like work stories, but getting to go dancing with Theo was really very lovely. That's my story.
That's a good one.
It's not really a fun story, but just as you know, moving to Tampa and learning about the art community here, the three names that you hear over and over again here are you hear Rauschenberg, Rosenquist, Wujcik. And I think that really, really speaks to what people don't know about our area is that we are an incredible area for creativity and artists. And I love that Theo is, his legacy just continues to thrive in so many private collections in the city. So I don't know Theo, but I feel like I know him through looking at his art and hearing the wonderful stories about him.
What story are you going to tell, Susan? Can you give me a hint?
Bill me, don't kill me.
Okay. All right. I'll tell the Basquiat story.
Oh, yes.
Some people already know this one.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Okay, I was not there. And so the story has been told many times in the community, nodding heads. So this is the way I heard it, and this is the way I'm going to repeat it. A couple who were collectors wanted a Jean-Michel Basquiat piece, or so. They went to New York. They went to Basquiat's gallery. They sought to buy works. The gallery would not sell the works to these people, these local collectors, and so then they went to Basquiat himself, and he sold them works, and they were subsequently shipped to Tampa, and it turned out that Basquiat had not signed the works. So the couple, the collectors, brought Basquiat down to Tampa, flew him down to sign the works. The couple threw a party to welcome Basquiat and their friends, their socialite friends in the community, and some others. And so Basquiat is at the party, and Theo and a friend, female friend, and Margaret Miller described it as that she was so worried because there was this exquisite white carpet in this couple's home. And Basquiat was smoking this really lengthy cigar, and the ash on it she described as about 4 or 5 inches, and she was convinced it was going to fall onto this carpet and it would cause, I don't know, a stir or something. So at some point, and I've heard an update on this tonight, that I mean, in these times you got to be careful, so I don't know where I'm going to go with that part of it, but there was a decision by Theo's friend to jump in the pool out back. So she stripped off her clothes and ran out and jumped in the pool. Theo followed. Basquiat followed. And others of the glittering group that had gathered also followed into the swimming pool. It is a true story, and I can tell by some of the nodding heads that it is. So I am sorry that I was not at that party.
And there's a painting.
Yeah, Theo made a painting.
As the follow-up to that,
Yeah.
that was before social media. So the only way that we know this is actually true is because of the painting.
Yeah.
I mean, other than all the stories.
And we have a journal.
Oh, good.
Well, HCC has a journal. To be studied. Okay, so a favorite story that was shared with me about Miss Lucky's bathroom. Theo had a knack for living life full tilt, and sometimes that meant things got a little messy. One night in the middle of the chaos of music, Theo and Chris destroyed the bathroom fixtures. When Toby and David, they owned Miss Lucky's club, found out and threatened to bar him for life, Theo said, "Bill me, don't kill me." So Theo used to say that to me all the time. That was his saying, "Bill me, don't kill me." That's how he used to always cracked me up. That was Theo owning the moment, disarming tension with humor. That was something. Theo was really funny. He was really funny, and I don't think people really knew how funny he was and how shy he was. You mentioned that earlier. But when he was out partying, boy, he was fun. And somehow turning even a broken bathroom into a story people are still telling decades later. It's that spark, that wit, that fearless charm that made him unforgettable. Theo lived loudly, laughed easily, and left us all with the memories that still make us grin. So that is my little tidbit.
We have a little bit of time. I know we started about 10 minutes later, but if you all have some questions for our panel about Theo, we'd love to hear them. So don't be shy.
I have a question, but I would like to say something since we talked about the painting there with Van Gogh and Chernobyl that I haven't been hearing, but I think some people know and others might not. That if you look at where there's the what do we call it, fence looking thing, that was one of the things Theo was working on often was he was cutting out its paper towels.
Yeah.
So if you haven't looked at that closely, you can look and see that it's actually like, I don't know if it's Viva or what it is, but it's paper towel.
Yeah, I was just explaining that to somebody on the Tampa tornado painting,
Yeah.
and that he would take layers of paper towels and then lay his template on top and then cut it out with a X-Acto knife or a razor blade, and then just make piles and piles and piles, and then yeah, he would adhere that on. And that's how he
You're
would.
trying to figure out how the paint does exactly that.
I mean, really,
Paper towels doing magic.
go really examine those pieces, because it's just fascinating. Look at it sideways; it's like insane. But I do have another little story about Theo, if you want me to tell it. It's really interesting because he worked when he was younger at the Ford factory assembly lines before he got married, I believe. Is that correct, Catherine? Yeah.
Before.
Yes. So this, to me, I was riffing this with Marsha Miller, that really, it just blew my mind, is it relates to all his precision, his collaboration, his exact, you have to be so exact to work on an assembly line, and it's a collaborative effort, and it's timing, and it's the sounds, it's the everything, to ching, ching. It's like suddenly you go, whoa, working in a factory, and then how all of that fed into like who he is. It just kind of blew my mind when we were riffing on it, and I just thought I would throw that out there and say, like, kind of, I think that's part of that, kind of background when you really start thinking about it. Anyway, question.
I guess this goes to anyone who would like to answer. We've heard a lot about like Theo being a mentor. Can anyone speak on his mentors? I know like Robert Blackburn was one.
Bob Blackburn, yeah.
Bob Blackburn.
Mhm.
Or if there's someone else. I mean, whether it's like in his community or just like someone that he knew. I'd love to know
Just
about that.
repeat the question so here. The question was, Theo is a mentor to many. Who were Theo's mentors? If anyone wants to speak to that.
Well, I can say right off the bat that the California artists, the Ed Ruscha, especially Billy Al Bankston and Larry Bell, really inspired him. And I would say I would consider them in a way like mentors, because they inspired him so much, and he really paid attention to their work. So I wouldn't say they were like direct mentors, but I would say that group really inspired him, and he paid attention to them. He had a lot of conversations with them, and so I would say that group specifically. And I would say even working with Jim a lot. I mean, Jim was the first person that really said when he started painting that, Theo, I work in metaphor, and I think that really kind of blew open that door. And so I would say that between that.
Yeah, and for this, James Rosenquist, ladies and gentlemen.
Whoops.
No, but I think it's lovely you refer to him that way, because as an art historian, I'm flipping through his journals, and he'd just be like, Jim stopped by the studio today at 9:06. We went out to dog track and then had some drinks. And he was so deeply appreciative of Jim and his comments about his work and talking about art and life. But yes, Rosenquist. Yes, another question.
Wally, can you talk to Theo's influence on bringing other, really prominent artists into graphic studio at USF throughout his tenure there? Am I getting that incorrect? Was there somebody else that kind of brought them there? But I mean, there's such incredible work that's come out of that so many of us have been able to enjoy, and some of us own those pieces, and they're some pretty prolific
I'll repeat their question really quick for those who couldn't hear. The relationship with the Theo and the really, again, canonical artists that were brought through Graphic Studio at USF during his tenure there.
That one's a reach back for me because of the time of when I came in, and many of those artists had been here, and I mean Rauschenberg I think was still living, and Captiva when I arrived. Rosenquist was around and frequently on campus and came to student parties and hung out in the graduate student studios. The selection, I mean, a name I don't think that has come up is Don Saff. And so there was this really truly legendary character in, I would say, the 70s, and he was the founder, if I'm not mistaken, somebody fix me on this, but he was the founder of Graphic Studio. And Graphic Studio went through a couple of 3 different iterations, but Saff was I think he was greatly admired and in some ways feared from the descriptions I get. He was very powerful in the community, kind of an outsized sort of character, a big guy physically as well. And he now lives in Maryland. He stays in contact with a number of people I know in the community. He was also dean of the college, and he had the vision, is my sense, of Graphic Studio, and that it would be this premier site for experimentation in printmaking, but at the loosest of limits of printmaking, and that it would sit within the institution, but loosely so. And it was, I think, an ideal fit for an academic art department, because you could just do things. You didn't depend on state money and funding to the level that an academic department like the art department or geography or what have you would depend on state funding. And so you could make decisions and you could also engage the market. And so that changed that dynamic of what Graphic Studio was about. But my sense is that, and again, help me out on this, those of you that know better, is that Saff made a number of those decisions and those relationships that became key to Graphic Studio's success, reputation, international reputation, and the works that you see. And I think that then, and again, I can be off on this, but I think those people became friends with Theo and an influence on him, and then I would imagine it was also reciprocated in some degree. I always felt, I mean, this is editorializing, but I always felt that he admired Rosenquist. I told him this one time. I think he admired Rosenquist at a level that was not always in Theo's best interest of being his own artist. And I was a Rosenquist fan. I had huge respect for him. It was a delight, an honor, a gift, if you will, to come to the community where Rosenquist was so active. But Theo was too, you know. And in many ways, I felt like that Theo was every bit the artist of some of these big names. I mean, there are stories that I've been told about. You know, he was very successful. Theo was successful in New York for a brief period of time. But then the most recent take on it that Kirk Long told me was that Theo, the gallery, the prestigious gallery that Theo was with, and other big name artists, wanted the portraits of the famous artists. And when Theo changed, and you can see again this evolution in the exhibition, the gallery was less interested in, and that's again market driven, and so but I don't know. I don't know that Saff didn't largely dictate a lot of those decisions. Susan's nodding there. Anybody else? Yeah.
We'll do one more.
Okay. I would just like, this is a question for anybody who thinks they from this evening and from this exhibition and this archive as a whole.
So I'll repeat the question. What would Theo think of this evening, the exhibition, the archive, this whole evening? Our panelists, what do you think?
What would he want us to take from this?
Yeah, what would he want us to take from this? Ooh, everybody's like, oh. I don't know.
I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
Do you want us all to go out and party?
Yeah, I'd say an after party at the castle would probably be top of yeah, and DJ.
What would Theo? Okay. I think I know Theo would be. Okay, so Wally mentioned earlier that Theo was very shy, which he was, surprisingly. And Theo really did undervalue himself, unfortunately. But at the end of his life, he did want this to happen. He asked me to do this. So he did, deep inside, have a belief in himself. He wouldn't have done what he did if he didn't believe in himself, right? We all have to agree on that. I mean, he couldn't not do what he did. Okay, so he was driven. I mean, this is in every fiber of his being. So I think the takeaway of this is that it's here for everyone to hopefully be inspired by, to create their legacy, you know, like he followed other people's legacy, he learned from everybody else, he's on the backs of others, but also look at your world. You don't need to come from any special place. It's all around you. It's, you know, and that's what we're here for. That's what he's here to say. And so that would be what he's hoping that you all get out of this. And that he didn't come from anywhere special. He didn't have any money. I mean, he came from a family of what, 13 kids? 10.
He was the youngest of 10.
Of 10. And, you know, it was, you know, it's just, you do what you do, and it's there. It's all around you. It's all around us. And so that's the takeaway. It's like, you know, right? What'd you
I think
say?
that's a lovely, a wonderful way to end the discussion. While you guys are clapping, can you please give another warm round of applause to our panelists tonight? Wally, Joanna, Tracy, Susan, thank you so much for sharing generously of your time with us tonight. I hope you all continue to explore the exhibition and check out the ephemera out here as well and get to know a little bit more about Theo. So thank you all so much for being here tonight.
Hey, and the show is up through November, and there's going to be, you know, another at least.
Yeah, it's up for a while. Come back.
Yeah,
visit
come
it
back
again.
and really take it in.
Start house galleries, have house shows, have it in front of your house.
Well, you did a superb job. Without noise. Got out of grad school.
Oh my
I was living on the East Coast.